My wife cheated on me, and what I discovered next shattered everything I believed about our relationship. I woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating, again. It was 2:43 a.m. The faint glow from her screen lit up her face as she slept peacefully next to me, completely unaware. It wasn't the first time her phone had gone off late at night. I had tried to ignore it for weeks. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But something about her behavior didn't sit right. The hushed calls, the sudden shift in her schedule, the way she started looking over her shoulder when we were out together, it was all adding up to something. That night, though, I finally gave in. My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone, the faint sound of her steady breathing in the background. I told myself I'd find nothing. But I was wrong. Her texts weren't just proof of an affair, they were so much worse. I recognized the man's name instantly, and when I scrolled further, the photos made my stomach turn. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a plan, a setup aimed directly at me. And now, I had to figure out if my wife was just a pawn in his game or if she was playing along willingly. The photos were clear. There was one of her and this man, his face partially obscured, but there was no mistaking the intimate way their hands were intertwined. Another picture was taken from behind, showing her in a hotel room, the man's shirtless back barely visible in the corner. There were messages too, ones that made my skin crawl, casual remarks about how they were almost there, and how he was looking forward to it. I felt the weight of every word pressing against my chest as I stared at the screen. I didn't know what to think. The woman I'd married, the woman who I thought was loyal, who I thought I knew, had been leading a double life. But why, and who was this man? More importantly, why hadn't she come clean? I heard a faint sigh from her, her head turning towards me in the dim light. Panic surged through me. I quickly placed the phone back on the nightstand, my heart racing in my chest. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up, and I breathed a shaky sigh of relief. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't want to know this. I wanted to go back to the time when I could pretend everything was normal. But now, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't unsee the proof of her betrayal. And as much as I wanted to confront her immediately, something inside me told me I needed to know more before I said anything. I needed to understand the full picture, and the man behind the curtain. I couldn't sleep after that. The images kept flashing in my mind, replaying over and over. My eyes were glued to the ceiling, and I couldn't shut off the questions running through my head. Why was she doing this? What had I missed? I spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone as though it held all the answers. It wasn't just the photos that bothered me, it was the tone of her messages. There was a level of intimacy in her words with this man that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just an affair, it felt more calculated, like a conspiracy I was only now beginning to unravel. By morning, I was no closer to understanding what was really going on, but I knew one thing for sure, I had to find out who this man was. I made my way to the living room, trying not to disturb her as she slept soundly, her breathing soft and even. I opened my laptop and immediately searched for the man's name, Michael Phillips. At first, I didn't find much, just a few social media profiles with very little detail. But then, I came across a company website, a small financial firm in the city. The name of the company was Horizon Investments. I clicked on the link and found his profile page. He was listed as a senior consultant, which seemed to fit the image of someone my wife would meet through work. But there was no mention of her anywhere. That didn't surprise me. If this was something they were hiding, she wouldn't leave a trace. But the website did have a contact email for him, which I copied down. It seemed too easy. Like this man wanted to be found, like he wanted me to know he existed. But why? I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to piece everything together. I thought about the way my wife had changed over the past few months, the way she had started to avoid certain topics, how she'd been spending more time at work, and how she'd never let me touch her phone. At first, I thought it was all in my head, but now, it felt like I had been blind to the truth. I needed answers, and I couldn't wait any longer. The next day, I decided to confront her. The anger bubbling inside me had become too much to ignore, but I was still hesitant. What if I was wrong? What if there was an innocent explanation for everything? But as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone in front of me, I realized there was no going back. She came down the stairs, her hair messy from sleep, her eyes still heavy with the remnants of a restless night. She smiled when she saw me but quickly picked up on my serious expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I just stood up and walked over to the counter where her phone lay. I picked it up slowly, staring at her for a moment. She watched me, her face becoming guarded as the seconds ticked by. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I showed her the screen. The images were all there, the texts too. Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw something that made my heart drop. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. Fear of being caught, fear of being exposed. "You have to understand," she began, her voice shaky, "it's not what you think." I felt my blood run cold. "Then what is it?" I demanded, the words sharp. "What is all of this? Who is he?" She looked down, her hands trembling as she wiped them on her jeans. "It's complicated," she whispered. I didn't want you to find out this way." I couldn't contain the anger anymore. "I deserve the truth," I snapped, stepping closer to her. "Why were you hiding this? Why the secrecy? What does he want from you?" Her eyes met mine, and I saw something I hadn't expected: sadness. A deep, aching sadness that seemed to consume her. She was no longer the confident, independent woman I thought I knew. Instead, she was someone lost in a situation she couldn't control. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant for you to get hurt. But I got involved with Michael because he had something on me. He knows about my past, things I never wanted you to know. He promised he could help me. He promised everything would be okay if I did this one thing for him." I felt my heart beat faster as everything clicked into place. "What did he want?" I asked, my voice low. She hesitated, the fear in her eyes deepening. "He wanted me to get close to you. To manipulate you into making a certain business decision. He's been blackmailing me. He knew about my student loans, my financial struggles. He threatened to expose everything unless I helped him. But I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know what he was really planning." The world felt like it was crashing down around me. This wasn't just about an affair. It wasn't even just about betrayal. It was about manipulation, coercion, and lies. The man who had been whispering in her ear was not just some lover. He was a puppet master, pulling strings behind the scenes. And I was his target. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what she had just revealed. My mind raced. I wanted to be angry, to scream at her for her part in all of this. But all I could feel was a deep, hollow emptiness. "So you're telling me," I said slowly, "that this whole thing, the affair, the texts, the photos, it was all part of a plan to get me to do something for him?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted any of this. He had me cornered. I didn't know who else to turn to." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "And now? What do we do now?" She shook her head. "I don't know. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you. I've tried to get out of it, but every time I tried, he threatened me again. And now, I think he's going to come after you." I clenched my fists, the anger building again, this time more focused. "Then we'll fight back," I said, determination rising in my chest. "We're not letting him control us anymore." The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: I wasn't going down without a fight. As I stood there, staring at her, I could barely process the gravity of everything she had just told me. Michael Phillips wasn't just some man who had swept her off her feet, he was the mastermind behind it all. The blackmail, the affair, the manipulation, it was all a calculated move designed to get me to make a decision that would benefit him. I didn't know whether to scream in anger or to break down in tears. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been playing a part in something far worse than infidelity. She had been under the control of a man who knew exactly how to exploit her vulnerabilities. And now she was telling me that she was trapped, unable to break free. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked, my voice trembling with both frustration and hurt. I was scared, she whispered, shaking her head as though the weight of her actions was too much to bear. I thought if I just kept doing what he wanted, I could protect you from the truth. But it just kept getting worse. I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know who to trust anymore. There was a long silence between us. Her words hung in the air, a quiet acknowledgement of the wreckage she had caused. I wanted to be mad, I wanted to hate her for what she had done, but all I could feel was an overwhelming sadness. I had thought we were a team, that we could face anything together. But now, she had pushed me away, lying to me and keeping the truth hidden for so long. And now what? I asked, my voice quieter this time. What do we do now, when everything has been shattered? She stood there, lost for words, as though the enormity of her betrayal had finally hit her, too. She seemed so small, so fragile, standing in front of me, a woman who had been hiding behind a lie for months, maybe longer. I don't know, she said, her voice thick with regret. But I want to fix it, if you'll let me. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll tell the police. I'll cut him off completely. But I need your help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman who had kept secrets from me, who had betrayed my trust in the worst way possible, was now asking me to help her get out of this situation. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. I can't just forgive you for this, I said, my voice cold. You've destroyed everything. Our relationship. Everything I thought we had. I don't know how to look at you the same way anymore. She flinched at the words, but I couldn't bring myself to soften them. I had to be strong, even if it meant pushing her away. But then, as the silence dragged on, I realized something. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This wasn't just about an affair or lies. This was about taking control of my life, of my future. And I couldn't let her or Michael Phillips dictate what happened next. Listen, I said, my voice firm now. You've done a lot of damage, but I'm not going to let him ruin me. We need to go to the police. We need to stop this before it goes any further. She looked up at me, her eyes full of both relief and fear. Are you sure? It's going to be risky. If he knows that we're fighting back, he won't stop. He could ruin everything. I'm done being scared, I replied. You can't live in fear forever. We need to take control now, or it'll just keep getting worse. And so, we made the decision. Together, we would fight back. We would go to the police, expose Michael Phillips for what he was, and hope it was enough to protect us both from the twisted grip he had on her life. But even as I made the decision, I knew it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be over in one conversation, one report. It would take time to rebuild trust, time to navigate the aftermath of this mess. The next few days were a blur of tense phone calls and meetings with lawyers. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew we had to act fast. We couldn't let Michael Phillips keep playing us like puppets, pulling strings from behind the scenes. I spent hours searching for anything I could find on him, financial records, company dealings, anything that would give me leverage. But it was like trying to dig through a wall of glass. Everything about him seemed to be airtight, clean, and calculated. It was as if he had been preparing for something like this for years. Every time I looked at my wife, I saw a woman who was desperately trying to make amends, but also a woman who had been scarred by the choices she had made. She wasn't the person I thought I knew, and every day I spent with her was a reminder of how fragile our relationship had become. One night, as we sat in the living room, waiting for news from our lawyer, my wife looked over at me, her eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, I wish I could take it all back. I never wanted any of this. I didn't know how to respond. How could I forgive her so easily when everything felt so broken? I don't know if I can trust you again, I said softly. You've put me through hell. I don't know if I can just erase that. Her face crumpled as she fought back tears. I understand, she whispered. But I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can change. That I can be the person you need me to be. The words hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. I didn't know if I could believe her. But I also didn't know if I was ready to give up on us just yet. Days passed, and we took steps forward. We went to the police, filed the reports, and began the slow process of distancing ourselves from Michael Phillips. But even as we fought back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. The deeper we got, the more I realized how much of a puppet master he had been. He was more powerful than I could have ever imagined, and if we weren't careful, he could ruin everything. But for the first time since I found out about the affair, I felt a sense of control. I wasn't going to let him, or anyone, have that power over me anymore. I was going to fight for my future, for the life I wanted, even if it meant facing the woman I loved as a stranger. It wasn't easy, it still isn't, but one thing I know for sure is that I'm not going to let my past define my future. No one gets to dictate my life, not my wife, not Michael Phillips, and certainly not the lies that have kept me trapped in this web of deceit.